Acha, I thought we are not going to be talking about what everybody has been talking about, COVID, COVID, and this, that, the other. What do you say? There's been too much of COVID happening. Everybody's all Tom, Dick, and Harry are talking about COVID. To talk about synergies in architecture, what to do forward, Sanjay, whatever have your thoughts been about the profession and how we should be going forward, what I feel is that we need to have synergies, not just with the client, but with large stakeholders. Like CREDAI is like, wanting to be on board immediately. So they are the larger stakeholders, and we need to have synergies with the larger stakeholders, which actually matter. An architect, honestly, and I'm going to say that, really doesn't matter. Even the Supreme Court has, that's why they've said that we are not the only ones who should be able to build. Anybody can build. Architects are only the license holders who, in case a municipality wants a license, then you need to be an architect. But I can't and you can't build without a structural engineer. You can't build without a contractor. You can't build without a contractor. Whereas a doctor does the operation himself. A lawyer fights the case himself. A chartered. So this is a difference. So what we need to do is bring in that respect for the profession. And I think going forward, that is the new architecture that needs to happen. Because, the regular you and me making a building, designing a house, designing a building is not going to be the way forward. Hi guys, so I was just saying that what are we talking about? Talking about doing it. Architecture, not in general as the new way of architecture, but also as a larger format. The biggies are here. So I'm like trying to be the provocateur, trying to tell you guys to take on a larger responsibility and role. Not just make your own building, think that we've done a better building, or we need to now start making a difference to the society. And this is the time when we are pondering over, we are trying to think what are the newer ways, and the newer ways is what we need to discuss a little bit. Any takes on that, Yatin?
Well, I was going to talk on the positives, and from a architectural fraternity as an organization, how will our work styles pan out, in terms of how that adoption of technology in our workplace, and how does that impact our efficiencies, productivities, and so on and so forth. So processes that, as an architectural fraternity, what does it mean to us in our practices is what I was thinking of touching on.
Hi guys.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Hi Yatin. Hi Gayatri. Hi Vivek. How are you?
Hi Vivek, and hi Vivek again.
Hi Vivek.
Vivek, you're on mute still.
Hi Sanjay. Hi Gayatri.
Hi Yatin.
Vivek, you're on mute.
I think we'll wait for a bit. I think other people to connect. I think people are all connecting now because the time was 3, so I guess people will now.
Oh yeah, it's still 2 minutes left.
Hi Supraja, yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Yes. Hi Supraja.
Hi Shanawaz.
Hey Shanaz.
Sharnava, Sarucha from Bangalore.
Hi Zubin. Hi Suli.
Suli, Iram, oh.
It's a party here. It's a party here.
I know.
Like I said, only known devils are joining this.
And you're right. Only the devils are joining.
I think she got dropped.
Yes, guys.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to all of you. These are unprecedented times. I'm sure you've heard this term a number of times every day over the last 1 month. But what to do? These are unprecedented times. And how does it affect us? We have 4 top-notch and eminent architects of the country: Sanjay Puri, Vivek Gupta, Yatin Patel, and Gayatri Shetty.
Yeah.
And everybody knows who they are. Well, the thing is that all eminent architects and the architecture community that has logged on, we've also sent a link to CREDAI. Members of CREDAI are also logging on, or we have basically the building community and the design community that is here. We all know that work has been inordinately delayed and workers have had to suffer with lack of food, lack of transport, and lack of accommodation. It will take a long time for all this to come back to normal, for building industry to come back to normal. So my first question is to Mr. Vivek Gupta. What do you see as the downside of what we are going through?
Well, the downside to begin with is that we're all sitting at home, and that romance of working from home is diminishing, I think. You know, the 3 weeks that we were talking about, everybody was finding new ways of working, getting excited, and planning our future basis. This lockdown period, which was just 3 weeks, and we thought that, you know, how many times in a week we actually need to go to studios, and we were getting excited about the fact that, you know, we will have lesser carbon footprint, perhaps that's the new way to work from home and everything. But, you know, that's all right for the studio. Like you said, Vivek, already, that architecture and building is not in the studios. It happens on the site. It's all right that I'll make drawings for another 3 weeks or another 6 weeks. But is that the way buildings will be built? No. So the downside, the biggest problem that I see already is the employment opportunities that need to be created for people who moved out. As Sanjay said, that people have moved out without food, they're living in shelter in space where they really are not provided for things. And most importantly, they don't have, they're not earning any wages. And I've said earlier, I think this is the time when the policy planners need to start thinking very, very pragmatically. Do we actually want a migration, a reverse migration to the cities to happen again? Or can we start providing them employment, starting with in infrastructure development like Narega and all those schemes that exist in the villages, so that they stay put there, they are provided employment, at least the immediate issue of Rozi Roti is provided to them. They're living in their own shelters or their own places that they are living in. But going forward, what I've been saying is that, is there a possibility that we as a fraternity support them because of the skill sets that they have? You know, wherever they have come from those villages to the cities to earn a livelihood out of a skill set that they have. Now, when they're in their own villages, if the same skill set is converted into a skill development center or an industry or a factory where they get employed and they stay put there, and we as an architecture fraternity, designers and architects, source out of them what we have been doing out of Italy or China or for that matter other places. So what happens is that they get employment in those factories which are in the villages. And I've also been saying that instead of looking at the entire scenario of smart cities, 100 smart cities and everything that the government has been talking about, we start looking at efficient villages. So these villages where these people, the migrant labor has gone back, start becoming efficient. And efficient villages does not mean that we take away the dreams of a city from them. You know, if for a village to be efficient, we need to provide them not just the employment opportunity, but also entertainment, the kind of city life. They should have malls, they should have cinema halls, they should have nice open spaces, they should have nice buildings, all of that. So I think right now, as an immediate thing, what we need to do is get them employment under various schemes that the government already runs, but very quickly get on board stuff that needs to be done for permanent employment of these people, or at least giving them the opportunities and the options to stay back in the villages, earn their livelihood in the villages, and we as a community support them by sourcing from those villages, from those industries, from those factories, which are situated not necessarily near a town or near a city, but in those villages. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
But then what happens to construction activity once it starts again, say maybe a month down the line or a couple of months down the line, or they are already talking starting in the green spots, in the BC category towns or in the rural areas? How does that activity get started if migrants?
So I'll just finish that, Vivek. So on that note also, then going forward, the way the civil construction happens in a different manner. We start making modular structures. You know, this until and unless architects' obsession with aesthetics goes away, we will not be able to find a new way of building. You know what happened post-World Wars? Every time the buildings became functional entities. They were not fancy buildings, you know, fenestration patterns and everything. Those, you know, the root modernism that came into picture, I think we need to start building like that. We need to make buildings which are completely utilitarian. And for that, we could look at modularity. We could start looking at prefab structures, which again are done in these remote areas. They get transported to these cities. And then the architects start thinking of buildings as functional entities, which are not, I mean, we can always put together a functional building in an aesthetic manner, but any kind of ornamentation that needs to go out of the window currently, we can sooner or later then look at the crafts and arts that exist in these people or in the skill set that these people have, and that starts coming into the interior. But immediately what we need to do is to have the buildings that need to be built with a modularity, with modular way of working. We can have prefab structures that could come and we start assembling them on the site. I think that should be the new way of building in this country now.
But that would take some time for it to get implemented, for it to go through. We would have an immediate problem. All projects are stuck. All projects are in certain stages of construction. They've been pre-designed in a certain way that would need some solution. So Vivek, you have some solution for this. How will we now come out of this and see that we complete our projects?
So that anyways, you know, that then we have to wait for everything to normalize, for the labor to come. The government has already come out with a guideline of how to start construction. In fact, the construction is starting in a couple of our sites, which are in rural areas, which are industrial projects, are going to be starting on the 20th. The contractors are trying to mobilize. The question is, with the fear psychosis that exists as of today, do you think the labor force would be willing to come back? I think as of now, you know, we saw that little example in Bombay 4 days back, when at the first given opportunity window, people wanted even now to run away to their villages. So the idea of thinking that people will come back for earning their wages seems a little far-fetched. So this is where I think we all need to brainstorm and think that, yes, of course, this extra time that we are getting, can we have some kind of a recalibration of even the design process that we've gone through? Do we sit down and talk to our clients and tell them, listen, hey, we become partners in trying to save money. We know that the economy is not doing too great. I know everybody will be into cost cuttings. Is there a possibility today, as the architectural fraternity, we sit and discuss with the clients and we tell them that, all right, you had approved of this particular design, but this is going to cost you this much. Now, the need of the hour is both pragmatically and financially to cut down on the cost, to cut down on the ornamentation that is there, cut down on the aesthetic part of it. The same building, the same use can be done with these changes in the drawing that we should, in this extra time that we've got, and then sit down and make the building anew. I think this is the start that we need to make, and all of us need to join together. Otherwise, once it's over, all of us will get back to our practices, our pursuits for client, our pursuits for making one better building than the other. And the fraternity will not gain anything, will not learn anything out of this once in a lifetime opportunity, a bad opportunity, but an opportunity nonetheless that has come our way. I think we need to take cognizance of this. We need to grab it, and we need to have architecture anew, which basically synthesizes and synchronizes with the need of the hour. We need to have buildings which are adaptive. There are going to be industries which will become redundant. So we need to have adaptive reuse of those buildings. Maybe you're in an industry which is failing. Same example, you don't need to wait for a Phoenix mill or a Kamla mill to come to a derelict situation and then convert it into malls. You know, you will have immediate fallout of this, where there would be industries which would not be viable at all. You know, you look at, you know, Air Deccan has gone out of business. There are going to be lots of airlines that could go out of business. You could look at those hangars which could be converted into a different set of use. You could look at some large industrial sheds that could be thought of as a new use or something like that. This is what is new thinking. This is what the fraternity needs to think like. You know, if we will keep on making buildings, which unfortunately are, I'm sorry to say, but architects are seen as a tool of DIY by all clients. We are part of the do-it-yourself kind of a thing. That's why we don't earn respect. You know, unless we start making solid contribution, we are game changers in the society, in the way a city functions, we will be irrelevant.
Thank you, Vivek. Now, a question for Sanjay. We have all been left with no alternatives but to work remotely from home. Jatin working from Alibag. What are your learnings working like this?
The learnings are that, you know, up till now, we never thought that we'd be able to work remotely like this. But it seems after the initial hiccups that it is possible. Of course, there is a huge timeline, but that's because everybody is not equipped with good conferencing facilities at their homes, in their buildings. So I see a lot of functional changes that are going to happen in future projects. What will happen is every housing society will now have a conferencing facility and state of the art, so that forget this. This is a pandemic. This is going to happen once in God knows how many years. But there will be other situations. There will be situations where a person is not well, or where, for whatever reason, a person does not want to leave the house. So they can go down to their conferencing facility within the same building, have their conference, connect with whoever they need to, do their work, and go back up. People who have larger homes will obviously incorporate everything within their houses. But for all the smaller apartments in all the metro cities, there's going to be large amount of conferencing facilities made in the society. There will also be a healthcare facility, I think, now provided in most new housing societies. Already people are talking about it. Like it's the need of the hour. So to have, and there are already some projects in places in Surat and Rajkot which have taken care of this. I mean, way ahead of their time, they've actually got a whole healthcare facility within the society. So there is that aspect. There is the aspect that our offices themselves are not so well equipped to deal with connecting to various organizations, various other offices across India, across the world. You know, up till now, we've had so many applications, giving applications. So we've given advertisements for architects internationally. And there have been so many applicants, but every time it comes to this point that, you know, they come to the conclusion that it is too difficult to find an apartment or a rental space in Mumbai, and it becomes too costly. So therefore, let's say somebody from Italy wanting to work in your office cannot really come. But now with this, we've seen that it is possible to remotely connect. So it's not just architects across India, but you can connect with architects, graphic artists, artists all over the world, and they can become part of their office on a regular basis with this kind of connectivity. So I see a lot of connectivity related things improving everywhere. But Vivek had made a very valid point that there is a time to think. I don't know how one can actually look at this whole aspect, but yes, there is a need to automate maximum amount that you can do in construction. We can't make everything cookie cutter, but you can say that, okay, there is at least to this extent, it should be automated. So the need to have so many people coming from the outside to a site is reduced. It is possible. The is that when you have a construction site of a certain size, it should be made mandatory that the developer or the contractor needs to have that much accommodation available on that site. Otherwise, you don't get permissions. And that accommodation has to be really decent, because we've seen all these workers how they're suffering. So there has to be healthcare facility provided to them, there has to be cafeteria provided to them, and decent bunk beds or whatever dormitories for them to stay on site. Those are the immediate changes that I see.
But do you think that architectural firms will now start employing architects from around the world to work on projects? And will it work?
I think so. No? This has opened up that whole thing. I think, Yatin, you. Yeah, I was just reading an article just yesterday. There's this firm called Sauta from South Africa. They have about 200 plus office, and they're working in 35 different countries right now. They are known for making these very large luxury houses. So they are already working in 35 countries, and they already had all these softwares in place which allowed them to connect to every place. And they came on record saying that it has not made much change in the way we work, because we have anyway been working like this for the last 3 years. We've already got all these connectivity things built into our programs. So that's an example.
Yatin,
Yatin, you are muted.
do you see positives in what is currently happening? You'll have to unmute.
Yatin, you are muted. Yatin, you are muted. Mute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, while everything that we see around and speak about today or read in the newspapers or watch on television is just bad news, there are quite a few positives I see personally from
Yatin, we are losing you.
I think the data
Come on.
sorry, so this is one thing that really needs to improve: technology and connectivity.
We can hear you, Yatin. Yeah.
carry on, Yatin. We're able
I
to
think
hear you.
Vivek, if you can proceed, I'll try and see if I can get a better connection.
Okay. Question for Gayatri. Do you see changes in the future? Do you envisage a different way of working as we go on? And what changes do you think will happen in terms in functionality and requirement of projects?
I think this is a great time for us as the building industry, the architecture fraternity, as well as the building industry, to really make a paradigm shift. If we look at the large building sites or even the smaller sites, I think we are still stuck in fairly processes which are not in tune with modern construction and things like that. So I feel that this is a time for our industry to really come forward, make sure that at different levels, of course, this needs to happen, and of course at the policy level where we're talking about building sites, all making sure that there are stringent laws to look after labor, making sure that accommodation and food and cleanliness, sanitation are all taken care of, without which people shouldn't be allowed to really do go forward. So the laws there would have to be stringent at that point. Having said that, I think for people to for labor to actually get certified in a skill, I think is the next thing that we should look at, because most often we're looking at totally unskilled labor doing various kinds of work. So I feel that institutions like IIB, IIA, and should really take it, CREDAI should take it upon itself. And I know a lot of corporates are already doing some amount of skill training for people, but I think this needs to be consolidated at at a larger level and at a country level, where we can look at people getting upgraded in their skill in different levels. So probably you plus skilled workers and maybe second-class skilled workers, which will also give people a way of upgradation right up to, I would say, craft. Like, I mean, if you have a skill that can go right up to being a total crafts person where you can earn that much more, that should be a visible, growth that people can look at. Of course, this would probably work for, say 10% of labor, but I think 100% of labor should really have upgraded facilities, and there's no, there's absolutely no reason why we cannot do that. I guess it would all take a toll on costing at different levels, and where it would finally be a, I wouldn't say burden, but it would really increase the cost of construction itself. But this is the time. I think it's time we need to do that and make sure that people in our industry, who I think are almost at the, in the worst strata, to think that or most of them are construction workers who have really been who are in a sorry state of affairs today during this pandemic is really sad to say. The other thing that we were talking about was really the functional aspect of buildings and societies. I think it is true, things are going to be changing. Things will have to be a lot more flexible, I would say. I think the way buildings are being used could be different from certain time to to say a later time. I would say things like even schools and colleges, which are used, say probably till around 3 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, can be used differently, post 4 or post 5 p.m. So there would probably need to be a lot more that we need to look at so that we can build less. I agree with Vivek and Sanjay that we really need to build a little less, but we need to improve the quality. So I would say that our leap should really be in quality of construction, quality of design, people spending more time detailing a lot more, making sure that we reach a very high level of quality, and really look at bringing down the quantum of building. In fact, I I strongly believe that as architects, we really should get back to being the master builder, so to say, because, the thing is, architecture is all about assimilation. And now, as of now, in the last, say, decade or so, people are, all the verticals that we have been, so, focused, or consultants have been so focused that the overall building itself probably can get more when, the architect comes into, playing a bigger role. So this is my point as of now, Vivek.
Just to follow up from here, I was talking to a very large developer, and he said that the future will require us to have an office in a residential apartment. And then I was discussing with Sanjay a little while back, and he says, not only that, we would probably require fantastic video conferencing, high quality video conferencing facility at a common area, if not in an apartment. But the large developer wanted an office space in every apartment. So I have to get back to the drawing board and redesign it suitable for working from home.
No, absolutely. I don't know whether one needs a large working space, as part of your residential apartment or, space. But I think within the campus, it would be great to have really high-tech facilities, because, connectivity would need to be of a higher quality. You need to be able to, almost have spaces that, like your WeWorks and, facilities that you have across. It would be important to be able to use certain time, not necessarily 100% of the time, not necessarily to take places on rent on a monthly basis, but it could be even for time, time slots as such. So I feel that it is required in the larger society, neighborhood, community, apartment block where you can almost walk across, but and less of office complexes which are right now large campuses by itself where people commute in buses from one place to another. We should keep that really small. And also, I think public transportation also becomes key, where we have less people in with individual cars on the roads and have more people going by public transport or by buses and things like that. Or just walking and cycling. I think that would be great.
So you're right, Gayatri. Sorry, Vivek, I'm going to butt in there.
I was going to come back to you only because I saw that you seem to have got your connections in place. So I'm very happy to hear you on the positives. If you think that we can take some positives out of what is going on.
I'll come to that, but I'll just take on from what Gayatri was mentioning with regards to the commercial spaces. We've been doing a lot of work in the commercial area, and what we've realized and what we've studied is when companies fit out their premises, and let's say that they have a head count of 1,000 people, they're obviously fitting out their offices to accommodate 1,000 people at one go. But studies say that on an average, no more than 65 people are occupying their space. So imagine if there are 1,000 people, and if you count 100 square feet for each person, it's 100,000 square feet, and 35,000 square feet is unutilized at any given point of time. And that I'm talking about at the peak. We recently completed a study which we did for a company, and we realized that they're not exceeding 70% occupancy at any given point of time. Now, we did that over Diwali and a few holidays as well, but at an average, no more than 65%. So we are actually currently overbuilding. So if we start making these studies and making customers aware that your true need is only probably 2/3, we're automatically going to be building less. Now, coming to the point of co-working spaces, and with the current situation that we are in, people are realizing and are adapting to better communication tools and newer ways. And we will be, once this lockdown is over, it's going to be a different world. We will all be looking at newer ways and discovering ourselves and discovering how we will work and what are the best ways in which we will want to conduct our own businesses. So there are going to be situations where companies are going to be allowing work from home. In situations like that, when we're already talking that space requirements are only going to be 2/3, are actually currently only 2/3, and then when you're allowing an agile environment for work, we're saying that there will be a few people or a good percentage of people that will be allowed to work from home. Now, organizations will look at this as a practice to allow people to work from home. Therefore, the space requirements also start becoming lesser and lesser. And what will happen is the need for co-working spaces like the WeWorks, or like you mentioned, space within your apartment building where one can work from, will become more predominant, and which again, like Gayatri rightly said, will cut down on the carbon footprint. People will have to work, to access the office spaces will become much easier because they're getting digitally connected. They can be allowed to cross the road and work from a co-working space or within your apartment building. So the carbon footprint on the transportation also reduces. So it's going to be a completely different world. And I guess it is up to us as architects to educate our clients and companies that going forward, to truly understand their needs of space, and not just keep building space. We say is 100 square feet per person is a norm, but that will change. You may still provide 100 square feet per person, or even provide 120 square feet per person and create a much better environment, which is more productive and efficient, but allow for lesser people at one time to come in and work, and allow different modes of work from various other locations.
Yatin, sorry, I will butt in here. You know, this is a very positive and optimistic attitude. My fear is, will we have work to do? You know, we are all in a scenario where we're not addressing the elephant in the room. The question is that the economy is going to take a huge hit. Everybody understands that we need to now consolidate. Everybody understands that we need to cut costs. Everybody is going to rethink on the projects that they were doing. Every office fit out is going to rethink, you know, you and I are doing all those kind of projects, and everybody, all of us, the fraternity as such. Are we not addressing the elephant in the room by thinking that there will be work? My fear is that there may not be work to do either from home or from the studio. In that scenario, what is the new way that an architect needs to think? And I think that is where I feel that we need to partner with the large stakeholders. We need to have synergies with the larger stakeholders. Who are the largest stakeholders? I mean, just imagine healthcare facility. An architect or a firm like yours, which is a large firm, needs, as Gayatri said, to be master builder. You need to take up an EPC project where architecture is a very small part of the whole thing, you know, but a healthcare, when you start getting into healthcare domain, at least you are generating employment for the architects in your office. What will also happen, this is the new synergies, and you are synchronizing it with the need of the hour. The need of the hour is new kind of work that will happen in the domain. I don't see so many office fit outs because we already have, like you are saying yourself, that the managed office spaces or co-working spaces, you know, for all you know that tomorrow I might, a large company might say that, listen, we do not know about the ergonomics. We do not know about what is the minimum requirement, whether 70 square feet per person or 100 square feet per person. We need to house 500 people from my office, manage my office space. I'm not going to spend any capex on my office. So that could be the new way of working. But I'm saying, forget about offices, forget about new kind of fit outs that are happening. What is the new kind of work? Do we post this? Think at a scenario where we should go to the city municipal council, we should go to the government, we should go to the planners and tell them, this is how we need to build now. This is how cities need to be built now. This is how redensification needs to happen, and get project for ourselves. We need to become relevant. And my plea to the entire fraternity is that we need to leave this obsession with aesthetics, with making buildings. We need to become a part of nation building process, which an architect needs to be 100%. Otherwise, we really will be irrelevant in no time. Maybe we will have no work to do, whether from home or managed office or from your own studios. Yeah, Gayatri, sorry.
Yeah, so Vivek, I don't agree with you that we have a fascination for aesthetics. I think aesthetics goes with function, so it's like almost like a byproduct. Though of course, as architects, we would love to look at it in more detail, right, in terms of aesthetics. But my answer to you is that I think architects, millennials who are in the architecture field have a lot to do, because I feel from now on we really will have a lot more freelance people coming in, probably doing studio work, maybe doing research work. So we need research architects. We need, like you rightly said, specifically maybe for health, maybe for looking at sports, looking at different kinds of buildings. So we would need research, we would need drafting, people who are good at working drawings, we would need site architects. So I think there is going to be a lot of the quality improvement. So I would say that as of now, architects being jack of all trades is okay till now, but from now onwards, I think there should be a spike of, everyone taking it to a speciality, not necessarily a master's, but really looking to upgrade themselves in skill. What do you say, Sanjay?
I agree. It's exactly that, because the aesthetic part comes along with the thing.
I didn't deny
Yeah,
that.
what you're saying is
Obsession with aesthetics I'm talking about. Just that.
what happened.
I'm just saying the obsession with aesthetics, not otherwise.
It's not that.
You
It's
need
not.
a little obsession
The
to
aesthetic
make things.
more or less comes with the design. It's not about that. But it is about, like you're saying, you need to mechanize things. You need to get some kind of processes in place. And absolutely right in saying that stuff needs to go out of the cities. You cannot have so many migrant workers. I mean, like, it's the population coming in is more than the city. Yeah, it is ridiculous. So obviously, let packaging put. They should actually be those incentives for people to put up manufacturing
Absolutely.
facilities outside and give them less tax, give them 3-year tax holiday, whatever it is. But get all these small places so that even in villages, so you're improving the village also, plus you're moving the thing out of the city. So it's like a two-pronged whole thing. But now who's going to do this? Because for that you need planners, government, architects, all of it together. So, but it may be a good idea, because otherwise this will get left in talks, to prepare a whole formulative thing and then go, do the government, to the urban ministry, and
We
say
need
that
to-
this is what we need to do. Because otherwise, how are we going to progress out of this? And this is really a very, very good opportunity. Get all the manufacturing out. It has to be completely mechanized systems here. Minimum amount of labor force. Aren't there companies? I mean, Nitco's got a company, right? Which the person does not touch the marble from the whole slab cutting to the process. We've seen the whole process. At the end result, there is not a single person touching the marble anywhere. And this we are talking about marble slab. You remember the time when marble used to come and it used to start, and then all of that shit used to happen on site, and it used to take like 3-4 weeks to just lay marble. Now you can get the marble cut to size, ready, polished, finished, and laid in 3 days. So where is 1 month and 3 days? So same thing needs to come in the building industry. All that stuff, like you can't start shuttering and then watering and waiting 3 weeks for one. It's too much. So you need to
New
mechanize.
ways of building. Yeah.
There was recently, I just add something here. There was recently a very large tender in Dubai where international companies were quoting, and there were a couple of Indian companies that were quoting. So they asked them, one of the pre-qualification, one of the information they needed to give, how many people are you going to have at site? All the international contractors said we would need about 115 to 120 people. And the Indian company had 2,500.
Wow.
2,500 as opposed to 115. So that's the difference in the way we work here, difference in the way people around the world are working. Sanjay, you were also talking about health facilities in residential complexes and other facilities that we may now need to add in case somebody needs to be quarantined or something that
I was saying there was a project that I visited like 3 years ago in Surat, and I was shocked that these guys had a complete medical, it was like a operation theater room, which is there within the residential complex. So I won't go into the other 10,000 amenities that he provided, but this was an excellent thing. And they had a full conferencing facility at that time. And this is a project that was finished 3 years ago, done by a local developer, and it was a local developer's thoughts put into this thing. His idea was that nobody who's living in my project should need to go out for anything but work. And in the case he cannot go out to work, he is not well, he's likely not feeling up to it, he should be able to operate from this housing society. And he had provided all those facilities in that place. So I see that healthcare facilities will become part of every residential project, part of every large office project also. I mean, the kind of large offices Yathinon are doing, you will need to have healthcare there also. So that's going to be there.
So
plus, overall, the healthcare facilities in the country are going to see a huge surge.
Absolutely.
You've got about 500 people hearing you, which includes developers as well as architects. So let's hope some of these ideas,
Do get, yeah. We need that. We need the fraternity needs are very, very important. But then you were saying something else.
No, I was just seconding Sanjay that anyways, most of the multinational companies or large organizations already have the practice of providing medical facilities. Currently, they may be in a small format, but they will need to get larger. But what we also have to think of is with social distancing, when we all go back to work now, be it in the next 3 months or 3 to 6 months on, with social distancing coming in, we are already talking about the 6 feet office. And, imagine in a technology firm where people are used to packing people in like sardines, and people are sitting just 3 feet away. And then now you say, you need to sit 6 feet apart. We're already going to say that the need for an office is going to be larger. So you're going to build bigger spaces. So that's a big question, a big challenge that is going to come about, that for the next 3 to 6 months, how are we going to resolve this? Obviously, it will mean work from home has to be encouraged. Alternatives workspaces will be required. Obviously, access to healthcare and will become extremely important. And well-being and wellness will be very looked after and sought for. But by and large, what it will happen is for people who are working, there will be a great impact on the work-life balance that will get created with all of this happening.
Yeah, that they will.
So I
I
think you are in the best position to answer that. Is that I think going forward, what Sanjay's point was that the society that he did, there was a place which is like I've gone through wars in Rajasthan, and every time there was a siren, we used to run into a bunker and stuff like that. So I think you are in that advantageous position where you left your apartment in Bombay to come to Alibag and be in that sheltered in this kind of a place. I think there is going to be, going forward, because of the fear of the touch thing and everything, where elevators become very claustrophobic, you have common corridors, elevators and everything. People may want to start moving to villages closer to the cities. The new urban villages could come into picture. And then the whole concept, that borough kind of a concept, where garage, today, if you see all the US homes, what the groceries come, they keep the groceries in the garage, get them into the house 3 days later or 4 days later for sanitization. So that kind of a concept is going to be there now. People more than ever before, if there is a choice of spending 2 crores on an apartment versus having to spend 2 crores in being able to have a house of their own, because of fears of security, isolation, being able to grow their own vegetables, fruits, vertical garden or whatever, will definitely want to move there. There could be a scenario where the builders could look at a possibility where cities can be created, or urban villages could be created nearer to the cities with better transportation facility, and also with the work from home kind of a scenario becoming a reality, or managed workspaces becoming a reality. I don't need to go to an office 6 days a week now. I could, for any client meeting or something like that, go to a virtual office or go to a managed office or go to a co-working office and do my meeting from there. So if you create this kind of an efficient new village setting or new urban village setting, where you are living with the facility of a borough or a garage or something like that, which is your isolation chamber, you are working closer to the house through these smart offices or co-working spaces, and then are also growing your own vegetables and everything, basically getting in some way a pandemic proof or another virus attack proof. So this is the only time when we can think of geothermal walls. We can look at digging our own bore wells. We can look at solar energy as the biggest generator of electricity and becoming self-reliant. I think builders need to look at and make architects partner in creating such facilities, creating such cities, which are the need of the hour, need of the future, and the way people's psyche has got damaged. I think it will work like that. What do you say, Gayatri?
I agree to a certain extent, Vivek, because there are people who are at different areas of their profession. And I think culturally, as Indians, there are certain things which are very positive that many people will go back to. One, of course, is almost like your typical joint family system, not as large as it used to be, but probably there would be some amount of thriftiness that we used to know of, where we would probably follow it in some degree. In which case, then the amount of building again gets reduced. Also, I feel that we have to, at the policy makers level, I think it needs to be a huge plan for the country where we make sure that our forests and areas, non-buildable areas, are protected. I feel we haven't really looked at it as a country, and it seems like we have lost a lot of land to agriculture, of course, but inefficient way of getting output from the land that we till. So if we look at it at a policy level and then work out a situation where some areas could be urban, and then the semi-urban areas that you're talking about, I think there's a huge requirement for people who are also who look for homes for the elderly and things like that, who really don't want to be isolated. So these would also become an area where people who would want to retire, who would want to be, probably spend part-time in the city and some part-time outside the city. There are these spaces that would really be helpful. But I think well-being and quality of life are the ones that really architects and designers need to concentrate on for the person who's living in these spaces.
Should we take some questions? Because there seem to be a lot of questions people have been posting.
Sure.
Yeah, so Anika, will you just collate some questions or let people in to talk?
4 questions.
So anyone who wants to ask a question, can you just raise your hand? There's an option of raising your hand on your screen as well. You can just click on raise hand button and I can allow people into the room one by one to ask questions. In the meantime, there are a few questions already asked in the chat box, so I'm just going to read one of them out. This question is from Rajiv Pare. Do you all feel that making buildings and using more modular precast methods, 3D printing of components, etc., are methods of construction that will force more organized labor working conditions as well as help being green by consuming less and wasting less due to design efficiencies inherent to factory model of production?
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. So yes, you need to automate, you need to do 3D printing and all that. Automatic bricklaying machines. There's so many things. We need
And that's
to
all.
automate.
There are examples of that already done in China. They've done an entire building as 3D printed an entire building there. So yes, we will see much more of that, and that is the need of the hour.
I also feel that maybe we will start building more in steel. Do you think that as a possibility? Because, right from the issue, every time the buildings do get building construction activity, at least in North India, gets stopped completely because of pollution levels and everything. When you build in steel, you use lesser concrete, and then all your RMC plants and everything reduces. I think there could be a possibility because there is more modularity, there is a more mechanized way of construction when you build with steel. You guys build lots of multi-stories, we do. I think even I am getting inclined to start building a little more with steel. Maybe that'll be the way forward. Also, one of the options to be explored a little more diligently.
So with modularity will come a lot of advantages. It will be the construction techniques will change. The production of materials will also become different. They become factory finished. So the finish qualities also improve. The number of labor requirements also get reduced for construction. Not just that, for people who are fitting out their spaces also, you start having modular sizes. say like an IKEA, you have a particular size that fits into a window. So a window size starts getting defined. It starts becoming modular. You have everything available to you that is a predetermined size, which fits all the sizes, or you have at least a standardization of sizes. So it not only improves on reduction of labor on building construction per se of making a building, but for tenants or actual end users coming in and using those spaces.
I had one more point to add here. I feel that as an industry, we should also look at moving towards zero wastage, zero garbage coming out of our sites. I'm not sure, how long that will take, because we really haven't been putting our minds to it. But I think if we really focus, I think a lot of the, unnecessary landfills can be, solved, really.
So I think, Gayatri, basically, I think it's the debris that comes out of. Besides that, I think most of our building material on sites is used to the last thing, at least the amount of recyclable use of brick, right from putting it into the courts to breaking into half to using it into like a rodi, or to finally using it like a powder as a geru or something. I think that's the greatest modularity that anything can have is brick. And most of our material that actually goes out is when you demolish something like that. But besides that, I think everything gets sold as a scrap or things like that. But yes, architecture and buildings as an entity are largest plunderer of natural resources. As long as we are building with material which is available in the vicinity and start building a little vernacularly, or as I said, factory fitted material, factory made material, which is steel and stuff like that, I think we will make building a little more green like that. And going forward, this is a lesson for us that this virus or this pandemic is one of the things that can actually happen. It doesn't happen in sci-fi movies. The other thing, that global warming is a factual thing. I'm the last of the sustainable living guys, but I think my architecture is extremely sustainable, because I realize that what we put out there stays for at least 100 years or 50 to 100 years, and it better respond to the climate that we are building in. So each of us need to start respecting the environment that we are building in, the climate that we are building in. And I think that's one of the lessons, that without having to go through global warming where the temperature is going to go to 60, 65 one fine day, and that day is not too far if we start continue to build the way we are building, I think.
But I think there seems to be consensus that modular, steel, all products ready to use, like Sanjay mentioned, and Nitco does pre-cut, pre-polished, ready to use. We ensure that there is no wastage. If there is no wastage, there is minimal debris. So I think all products that go into the building may have to move towards being ready to use and not being cut or fixed at site.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question. The next question has come from Ekta Parekh. While there is a need to not have migrant workers come into metros to work, their entry into the city is commerce driven. How possible is it to set up industry in these remote locations, and that too, how many can we start?
Ekta, you go all the time to Italy, and from the Milan fair, you are taken by in those fancy cars to villages, basically, where those Italians harp on the fact that, this was started by my grandfather 150 years back or 125 years back. And those are villages, basically in a nicer landscape. So the same thing can actually happen here. Only thing is, you may have to travel to a village in Bihar or UP or Haryana or Punjab. But the fact of the matter is that you can, the kind of craft that has been there in Indian villages, why do they come to city? They come only for search of livelihood. But if you start actually looking at the economics of the whole thing, they have to spend, the moment you are away and make a nuclear family, you have to start spending right from your rentals to your food to your living expenses and everything. And you are devoid of even the emotional comfort that you have. When you go back to your village and your place where your native place, at least the basics are taken care of. You have a place to stay. And I'm talking about today, at least 90% of people who live in those villages. You have a little bit of crop, at least a veggie garden or something like to go and eat at the end of the day. So basically what you earn, even if you earn a little less than a city, your economics at the end of it make it viable for you to stay in that village. And the point number 2 is that this is what my plea to the fraternity is. Consider the Indian countryside to be not a bad drive. Try and go from any nearest airports, and we have 105 of them in this country, or maybe more now, and go and drive to the nearest village that is there, where these villagers are going to be starting a factory, industry, skill development center. Let us promote that. And I'm not against people coming to the city. No, it's fine, because it's not just the construction workers who come to the city. There are service providers. Each of us, I think, depend on at least, if not about 10 to 12 service providers, from your maid to your cook to your dhobi to your driver to your jhadu wala outside on the road sweeper and everything. So they are required still in a city. So those people will still come because they will not find that employment in their villages. Only thing is, then we will be able to manage the migrant workers with a proper housing scheme, with a proper scheme of transport. All that load on a city and city's infrastructure will decrease. We have to definitely start thinking now and start thinking, and architects need to go on these national debates. I have never ever in my life seen an architect on a national debate whenever there is a city improvement being spoken about, whenever there is, I've never seen anybody. Why? Are we not part of city building? Are we not part of infrastructure development? Are we not part of that? It's time that architects get center stage, get out of our own studios, get out of our relationship with just the client, create our own client. The city municipality can be my client. The government can be my client. I create a project for my own self and go to the government. And trust me, as Naresh would say, or some other people who are working in the policy planning would agree, that there are enough listeners if there is a solid project or a solid policy that we want to portray. And I think it's high time we need to do that.
Yes.
So I agree
Well said.
with Vivek. I agree with Vivek that, there are certain amount of craft, cottage industry kind of setups that we should be really proud to be associated with in the country. And I'm sure all of them would really be, would really want that kind of encouragement from our fraternity. But I think the more important thing, Vivek, is to really look at, the migrant workers who come and work at our construction sites. It's important to make sure that it is not a temporary accommodation for them. Is there a possibility, like you said, there are government schemes for housing. They have the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana 2020, where they're talking about housing for all. Now, if we as architects get into, or they involve architects, into some of these schemes and, policies, I think we'd be able to give a lot to benefit everyone together. As of now, it seems so isolated and somehow doesn't seem to be a successful project when it's done in isolation like that. So I feel people who come in, migrant workers, they shouldn't be in dormitories. I feel they have to come in with their families and live during their prime working age, so to say, and be in, housing like this and go back when they want to retire, or, continue living there. It has to be a way of life rather than just a coming in for the economic, requirement, for each and every one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are all going to keep doing these talks, and every time it happens that the government needs to get involved or we need to get involved with the government, when is that going to happen and how is it going to happen? More importantly, how we all think these things, okay? We all think the correct thing. Most of us think the correct way. Everybody's talking about the correct thing. There are a number of forums like this where these discussions are going on, all pertinent, all correct, all great. But when will it get translated to actual government involvement, and how is that going to happen, and who is going to facilitate that? That is the key, because the government does not come to architects with experience or architects with that kind of foresight. So how is that going to happen? Anybody has any suggestion on that? How do we get the involvement? How do architects raise their voices enough to be heard to get into that? That's the key. These are all great ideas, otherwise they'll all remain in discussion like this.
So I think the council now is trying to do that, and what I feel is that, firstly, how much role we have in the building industry. That's the first and foremost thing. What is our role in terms of percentage? If I was to talk about, if a building is costing 2,000 rupees and your fee is 200 rupees, it's 10%, which is a very large fee. If the fee is 100 rupees, your percentage of your contribution I'm talking about, in a very mathematical term, is 5%. So you are a 5% stakeholder in building industry. That's it. The only combined voice that all architects have is, perhaps, if any relevant voice is there, is council or Indian Institute of Architects. What today you and I do not even know is whether we come under Ministry of HRD or we come under Ministry of Urban Development. That's one of the most important things. Council somewhere was more looked at as something to do with education. So I believe it comes under Ministry of HRD. The day, I think we, all politics apart, we have a slight dynamic minister who's urban development minister, who's seen the world, who could be very, very influential. If we could approach as a body, and maybe perhaps council or Indian Institute of Architects, for all the suggestions that could go from architects to the council, and they could go as you and I are ready to spend our time, come to Delhi, go with the council, get into a situation where, are we ready to do that? If we do that, at least we'll be heard. And I think it is time for us to do that, Sanjay. And people like you, the entire fraternity looks up to you. You have some 50,000, 1 lakh, I don't know, followers. Everybody looks at every project that you do.
That's not relevant, yeah.
Large practice, Gayatri. All of you guys need to come on, become the voices of architects.
So Vivek, you have to
accountable now.
Now that we are having this conversation, you have to take on a commitment that we will all get together and come to Delhi and have
please be my guest.
Discussion.
Be my guest. Honestly,
we can do that.
With you.
No, but is the council going to take that much effort? We will go to the council.
500%.
What?
Along with the council, I think they will.
You think that they will not? We will make them do. They
I think maybe no. One sec, Vivek. There is another solution. That with KEDAI, NAREDCO, with the developers, because finally it's all development. 30% of the GDP is construction.
Right.
Absolutely.
Gang up with the developers, come to a certain platform, make everybody agree that this is what is required. It's going to benefit the city, it's going to benefit the whole country, and with them it becomes a much stronger thing. And then go to the respective government with of different states. Start with 3 states, then go further, and then go further once you make some headway, and do it that way.
100%.
Get policy changes made. Everything the council not going to do. A council has been is still struggling to get the whole architects thing together. Yet,
I think the council will help, but I think it's better, it's more aggressive if IIA or the architects get together with KEDAI, because then you're a force to reckon with. And the only thing is that this probably, I don't see it as a state, process. I think it's better that we do it as a central thing, whether even the minister for, infrastructure or, the urban minister
exactly.
really takes it seriously.
But CREDAI
Exactly.
is making their own document. I think as architects, we need to now also have our own document, which is either an IA or a council can do and join hands with. You see, we also need to have our own agenda. Now, CREDAI will not think on behalf of the architects. CREDAI thinks only on behalf of builders. They, to be honest, will perhaps not even think about city. They will only think about, you and I make these SEZs and IT parks. I'll be honest with you, and I'm just giving you one example. When we are doing this 2.5 million square feet IT park, and when I saw the lay of the land, everything, I said, boss, even to get out of this, like Yatin will say, at 100 square foot per person also, the numbers were some 25,000 people. So I said, even for them to get out on this road, it will take half a day. So I sat down with the municipal councillor outside. I made him make some gaps in the median in front of the building, at least so that it was not going to be a scenario where to get into the building you are going to go, and that was the only building on that road in that sense. So, you also need to look at how your building is impacting the rest of the area, the rest of the city. So this is what, as a responsible builder and an architect, we need to do. Builder also in this scenario he said, Vivek, forget it. I don't think anybody will listen to you. So when I sat down, I said, no, I think it's blasphemous for an architect to design, the net area and everything, usable area was some 1.4 million square feet or something. And I said, the number of people who are going to be working here is going to be monstrous. For them to come in cars and get out of this will take half a day. So I cannot have this lay of the land, and I cannot have the road layout like this. So we also actually need to very strongly partner with the city, with the builders and the larger stakeholders to become relevant and to make that little impact in the correct planning.
But Vivek, that can only happen in Delhi because, like you said, there are important people who all have to be part of that commission or that group. And for that group to really happen, or that commission to really be formed, you need, the good offices of, say a government official, so that it becomes easy and mainstream across the country.
Gayatri, sorry, I don't agree. I'm taking too much of mic, but I'll tell you, example, in Gurgaon, there's a place called Biodiversity Park. That was the biggest mafia that you can in any city. There were stone crushers there. And if any of us in the building line knows the meaning of stone crusher, that's the biggest mafia. And in phase 3 in DLF Gurgaon, there's an organization called I Am Gurgaon. It's led by a lady called Latika, and our Swanzal is also part of that, and some of other architects. I don't even know how much, 2,500 or something like that acres of that land is today a biodiversity park in the heart of Gurgaon, where there are land sharks. Can you imagine anything like that? And it has happened through simple, persistent efforts of an NGO called I Am Gurgaon. They're converting bund roads, which used to be bund, into pedestrian walk. They're doing phenomenal work. So what I feel in today's scenario, where you have some nice administrative officers in this country, if you go to them with a solid, workable plan and with a roadmap ahead, they do listen to you. But if we go, and that is for a city level, there was no selfish interest. Nobody wanted to carve out a veggie or something like that. So I think the city council do listen to you. National level is very, very different. But what we start doing at our neighborhood level, then our community level, then our city council level, then taluka level, then district level, I think the whole country will change. We don't have to feel so dejected about our role. I think we need to reinvent ourselves as a professional. Why does a lawyer get little bit of respect? Because he solves the thing for you. He fights the case and solves. We are like, every client feels architect was a tool of do it yourself. I could have done it better. What has he done? He just made it right. I also knew how to make my house. I also knew how to do the interior. Every Chairman Yatin will tell you, actually okays our drawing. Our layouts are okayed by a guy who's not allowed to choose a curtain in his house. His wife wouldn't allow him to change a bed sheet or select a bed sheet, but he comes and sits on a project which I'm designing and says okay or not okay. So we need to get out of that mentality. We need to take honors of the work that we are doing.
Vivek, you need to stand for the IA elections.
Why not?
No, I'm serious here.
Yeah, no, serious. But I'm the voice. I'm ready to talk anywhere. Whatever you want.
What? You already what?
Yeah, I'm talking. So it's reaching council, it's reaching CREDAI, it's reaching IA. I'm sure it's reaching everywhere. Shani is saying, Vivek, go. I'm going. Yay! There you go. Yes, Vivek. Over to
I
you.
think we should
Okay, so
call
we
it a day, no?
Oh, okay. So we have someone wanting to come into the room to ask a question live. We have Salil Ranadive to come in. Salil, if you can just unmute yourself and you can ask.
Hi, Salil.
Hi guys, lovely chat in the middle of a hot afternoon. I hope everybody's having lots of tea. You can see Vivek having like mint water.
It's too hot here, man.
Of course, there are people in Alibag who are enjoying life and sitting by the swimming pool and all that.
Glass of gin.
Still at my water.
Yeah.
That's gin. Salil, that's gin, by the way.
Anyway, so I had these two quick points to make. One was, I sort of followed your discussion and very interesting, points that were made by everybody. I think there's with the way this pandemic is hit and is hitting at least the big metros, Bombay, Pune, Delhi, and if you see there, the biggest worst hit areas obviously are all the slums. And, there's one pandemic that started from the more well-to-do areas because they're the guys who traveled and brought it back and then gave it to their staff. And now it's, sort of all over Dharavi and Worli Koliwada and, all kinds of very sad places. Isn't it time for us to actually start putting pressure on the city through local communities, et cetera, to actually finally start cleaning up our slum areas? I mean, there's been, it's been on paper for the last 20 years, Dharavi redevelopment, SRA, et cetera, and minimum standards of living. This is a vital time for us to start putting pressure on these city groups, and maybe it's easier, rather than going all the way up to Delhi with council and IIA, to perhaps work on local communities. Maybe it's easier to get a year of Uddhav Thackeray, for example, or a local, Kejriwal in Delhi, et cetera. All of them are concerned, these are vote banks for them, and who wouldn't like to live better? I mean, nobody likes to live in a decrepit area. And they're the ones who are the worst hit. We are talking about migrant labor. Shouldn't we actually start putting pressure perhaps on local communities because it's easier to access them to, take a really hard look at the fact that, it's about time after 70 years of independence that, we sort of, make sure people live with dignity. And that's, in a way, one of the places that we just don't have control over the way, these areas function. Does anybody have a sort of opinion on this?
Yeah. So, Salil, absolutely right. And definitely projects like the Dharavi project should be taken up on war footing. There have been political pressures which have held that project back for several years now. Everyone has vested interest in that. We were part of one of the consortiums that were awarded the project. It was a great scheme, I would say. It was not restricted only to Dharavi. It was to ensure that all the industries also of Dharavi move out of the city. So like Vivek mentioned, there was a complete master plan that was developed for Dharavi, which included at a city level to take care of all the needs and to ensure that we have industries moving out of the city, proper accommodation for people. This would be counted as a SRA, but we still said we will not do that, buildings which are just 6 meters apart. We said these are people, we're going to accommodate so many people. The whole outlay was completely different. But then again, you have political pressures and the whole project is scrapped. is not scrapped. It is to be retendered now for a lame reason that there is additional space that is being allotted, which was not tendered. So there are all these pressures that come into play. Now, if we can create a body or a representation, which I don't know how, there's been lots of times and occasions where we all have gotten together, but nothing really comes out of it. But this time we need to really go out and make a point.
Yeah, because I mean, my point was that, you know, we should try and get people, you know, the problem of the fact that cleaning up a city is never part of a political agenda. They never look for votes to say, you know, that in a time-bound way, over 10 years, there won't be a single slum in Bombay, for example, you know, or in Delhi, or etc. I mean, they've just now in Delhi gone and authorized some of the slum areas, which were unauthorized earlier. And so, you know, he just knows that those guys are going to live in squalor for the rest of their lives, rather than saying that, you know what, we're going to actually, you know, rebuild these areas, you know, have. So in a way, it's like what happened after the war, you know, after the Great War all over Europe, that you actually got social housing, you know, on a serious footing. And most of the whole, you know, modern movement was based on this whole social housing sort of thing. Now, then whether it is modular, whether it is made of steel, all those are sort of, you know, means to achieve the, you know, the end, because you've got now like a huge amount of, you know, whatever, 15 million or 10 million people in Bombay living in slums that need to be, you know, created houses for within 10 years, for example. And obviously that is going to, you know, push processes like modular, like steel, etc., to do the construction. But the will to actually get on to saying we need to do this in a time-bound, focused manner, of saying, you know, you will not see a single, like what happened in Singapore, for example. You know, they think, and so how I mean, we got to get that onto the election agendas, onto the mandates for, you know, on the basis of which these people, you know, go looking for votes to say, you know, that these guys need to be given, you know, places of dignity. I think a lot of stuff will happen, and then of course, like we're saying, you know, you sort of create jobs for architects, you create, you know, and I've seen Yatin, the scheme that you guys put up, there were sports centers and recreation areas and markets and everything in that Dharavi scheme. It was, you know, like a wonderful plug-in into the city. But I mean, it will create hundreds of different opportunities for architects to work in. But, you know, but we've got to, I mean, it's half the city's population which is struggling in these decrepit areas. And we just, you know, maybe this is a way, or this is an opportunity for us to, you know, wedge our way into it, you know, to say, you know, there's half the city that needs to be rebuilt.
So Salil, the thing is that we have to firstly accept certain facts. Slums are a shadow of urbanization. That's to be given. When you build newer development, as I said, that each of that dweller in those developments would need a service support of, one apartment needs a service support of 8 to 10 people. Now, just the logistics of staying close to that place of work required in at least North India, in Delhi, and I'm sure in other places also, for every builder to make any building, there was a requirement to make EWS compulsory. So when you built a certain number of apartments, you needed to build those many EWS apartments for the service personnel of that apartment. Unfortunately, and it is a known fact that people do not want to shift into those simple economic pressure. They're happy living into the slums that they have unauthorizedly settled in, because the councillor there, the municipal councillor, looks after them, provides them with all facilities, or because they are the vote banks. They sell off their social housing, which have been away from the city, and I'm sure that in Bombay also, if somebody in Bandra, they'll make it in Mira Road or somewhere, they will sell off that place for a decent sum and continue to live there. That's a fact that's happened in Delhi, that social housing, I think in all government, you know, if we, without knowing the amount of work the government has actually done in this sector, we always like to, I'm sure like Yatin has done this project. The issue is that if we identify how to do redevelopment, going beyond the political and technological impediments in solving the problem, nobody wants to be uprooted. So you take up sections of Dharavi, you leave those roads, maybe take an airport, go ahead, some 50 stories, and let those people who are below that in that road vicinity shift up into those 50 floors up, so that your density has increased, but then subsequently within that 5 square kilometer, you will release those areas for parks and sports complexes or whatever Yatin has designed. The question is, if you want to uproot those people from the area that you are living in, you and I wouldn't like to shift out of wherever we have lived in, all our lives or something like that. The same thing applies to these people. We are being insensitive in trying to uproot them from Dharavi, which is where their childhood memories are and everything, and trying to shift them to Mira Road. I think that will never work. So if any scheme employs that, taking into account the human angle, the emotional angle, it can succeed.
I think the critical thing really is the space requirements, Vivek. I'm not sure whether the space requirements for each tenement really is as it should be. Of course we're looking at economies, but this is where the government really needs to step in and help in creating this along with builders. And I feel that this is the first step to really relook at those space requirements and see whether it is up to what a standard that we would really all think is good enough.
So in one of my discussions with Rahul Kadri, I was telling him that this whole thing about EWS being certain square foot per family has to be certain square foot per person of the family.
Yes.
Because, we end up giving them 65 square meter for each household. And that household, as it is, consists of 8 people and they are going to be multiplying. So they live in a perpetual slum any which ways.
Yeah.
So if you start taking into, and there is, I think the way this country has mapped this pandemic and the way this country has shown that data connection is possible during this, each person has been mapped. Literally, hats off to the government. The way we have mapped this pandemic, it is an example for the rest of the world. I think we can afford to do that.
It was a good discussion.
So we can afford to map those people, have each household, how many people are there in each household, provide them space basis of how many members in each family are there, so that thing of slum will go away. If every person is going to get 10 square meter per person, a family of 6 will get 60, a family of 10 will get 100, a family of 4 will get 40. I think we will remove the perpetuity of a slum from that picture.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, I think we are just about at the time where we still have viewership, and it was a wonderful discussion. I hope we can take it on to the next level with Vivek in Delhi. He has to contest and become the president.
Nothing else to do. I have to worry about my practice, man. No, sure. But anything that one can do in terms of being the voice, being a little activist, I am happy to do that. This is not for myself. This is for the entire profession. And unless we take cognizance, we will be completely decimated.
Thank you, everybody, for coming in. It was a pleasure. It was a fantastic discussion, and I hope we can carry it on offline and at other webinars like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, Vivek. This was a great initiative. Thank you, Sanjay, Yatin.
Thank you, Vivek.
Thanks, Vivek. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to meet in Delhi, Vivek.
Yes, surely.
Take this forward.
You're all being my guest. Done. All right.